Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Yeah. Ooh, that. Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Hey, so you know it's Tammi Mac. Hey, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. I'm Tammi Mac. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening in some parts of the world. So last week we had a conversation with attorneys who represent some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry about the legal pitfalls of Black celebrity life. Well, tonight we're continuing that conversation because it got so good. We're going to take a deeper dive into navigating Hollywood with Black entertainment and sports attorneys. Now, the business of being Black tonight on the Tammi Mac Late Show are Black Hollywood lawyers. Please welcome Senior Business Affairs Executive at Amazon Studios, Marjorie Williams. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi, Tammi.
A partner at Fox Rothschild, LaRon E. Rogers is back with us. Hi, LaRon.
Hello, hello.
And the head of business and legal affairs at Saban Music Group, Charles Hamilton, is here to talk music with us. Hi, Charles.
Good to see you, Tammi.
Nice to see you all again. So let's remind everybody of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Black attorneys and Hollywood, the industry in its totality. Why specifically should Black people in the Black community care that there are Black attorneys in Hollywood? Why? Marjorie?
So I have a better answer this week.
Yeah, you crushed me last week. It was like, the better question, Tammi Mac, is why are you asking that question?
No, but seriously, again, it dovetails on the importance of us having an understanding and a connection to our clients and our content, but also I think the ability to make deals is important because you're only as good as the last deal that you've done. And that's really kind of how Hollywood looks at you as a lawyer. And so I think it's important for Black talent to trust that we have the connections, to trust that we are capable and, to be supportive of us. And we then can do the same when we're in the room advocating on behalf of those clients.
Hold on to that word trust, because I'm coming right back to you on that one. LaRon, why is it important that we have Black lawyers in Hollywood?
Sure, just advocacy. I think that's the best word I can think of. In an authentic way. I think anybody who's going to have representation representing them, you want them to represent you in a proper way when you're not looking, and again that trust factor that. Because I have a better connection, I believe I'm going to be a better representative and I'm going to look out long term for a client more than maybe some others would. But yeah.
Yeah. Charles, you say what?
I guess it's important that we bring our full selves into companies we work for or the companies we create. And in that way, you're in the room sometimes when something crazy gets said. And if your mind is right, you actually speak up and you say something. And that energy, it's important that we go inside companies and learn everything about them and how they operate and what they do right and wrong. And it's also important that we take that knowledge when we elect to be entrepreneurial and go make something happen.
Marjorie, you talked a little bit about Black people trusting Black attorneys. So I want to share with you all this little story, this little personal story. So my mother was taking care of one of her relatives' estate and, trying to get her paperwork together. And this relative was approximately at the time, I would say maybe 90 years old, 92, 93. And so my mother was taking her to see an attorney to handle her estate. And she said to my mother, "Don't you take me to no Black attorney. I don't want a Black lawyer. If this man not a white man, when I walk in the room, I'm walking back out." And I have to ask, is there a problem with Black people trusting Black attorneys? Because the woman who my mother was handling the estate was a relative of ours. So that tells you she was a Black woman. She was a Black woman and refused to have a white attorney handle her her legal business. So is it a problem to get Black people to trust Black attorneys, Marjorie?
I mean, to be fair, so I sit on the corporate side of things, so I don't directly, have individual clients.
Oh, that's good. Hold on, that's good. So then let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do white people trust you?
Tammy, we're not doing this today. We in Mental Health Month. No, I mean, here's the deal, right? What I find, ironically, the bigger challenge I feel like that I run up against is the male-female dynamic, even more so than the Black-white. I think for me, it becomes a intersectionality issue where sometimes there is conflict because I'm a female and depending on how I present myself. And at other times there may be conflict, because of my race. But, my name is Marjorie Williams. We all can code switch and have that proper diction when we're on the phone. So I can't say that people all the time know that I'm Black. And so that's the reason why I'm saying that. I think internally, though, there are potentially issues where sometimes, someone may feel a certain type of way if I'm communicating something as opposed to if it comes from a different person. So,
Yeah. My mom used to always say, make them think it's their idea. You'll win. Charles, you said, "Ow."
She's good.
Well, I mean, that's I don't know, Charles, but I think that could potentially be a woman thing. I don't know because I'm not a man, but I do know that a lot of times when we are in the room, we go unseen, we go unheard, and so there are little.
I've witnessed that. I've gotten better. I've gotten better in older age at speaking up when I see it, or affirming it, because I've heard brilliant women say things, Black women say things, and be ignored. And so I was like, well, that was a really great idea. You have to reinforce it. I think, you have to do that all the time.
Yeah. So Charles, what do you say about
trust?
about
the trust issue with
Okay,
Black people trusting Black attorneys?
You touched on an issue of mine, because many of my Black friends in private practice do talk about a phenomenon where people think the white man's water or lawyering is better. I think that it's important when these things happen in our families to remind people that they're making a set of assumptions. There may be people who are Black who don't trust Black people. I don't blame us extra for that, because the whole culture, teaches us to distrust ourselves and each other. But I also will say that, that's an anti-Black default setting. That's how people's brains are programmed to assume the worst about every person who's Black. That is something that can be possessed by Black people, even if there were no one left on the earth but Black people, we would still have to deprogram our anti-Black default settings. And I think because as a lawyer and as a professional and as a good person, you don't want to be judged by the lawyer who did someone wrong, or by someone's expectation that, it's unfounded expectation.
I always find that fascinating how Black people, we don't get second chances. We just don't. And when we do, we damn sure not going to get a third one. So if one, like you mentioned, Charles, if one Black attorney does someone wrong, people just decide to cut off all Black attorneys. Whereas if one white attorney does something wrong, you don't cut off every white attorney and just start using Black attorneys. There is definitely a trust issue going in, and there's also this standard that Black people have to live up to. Do you agree with that, LaRon?
Yeah, I mean, I got into the business first as a sports agent. So when I was in law school, I recruited, convinced a sports agent to let me work with them, and so I was out meeting with families and whatnot, and there was a definite bias towards hiring white Jewish agents at the time. And you just have to deal with it. It's something that's implicit. It's an implicit bias. And you've been programmed in the brainwashing to believe that someone else can just do a better job because they're white. And that's just something we have to deal with. And I've had to deal with it as a younger lawyer. And now older in my career, I don't think I really have to deal with that much at all, because I just have the pedigree that supports, hey, if you want to rock with me, you're going to rock with me. but you do deal with that as a younger lawyer, definitely.
We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Tonight, the business of being Black is our Black attorneys. That's what the business of being Black is tonight. And with me, I have Marjorie, LaRon, and Charles, all Black attorneys who can answer any of these questions that I have to ask them. We're talking specifically about the entertainment industry. So don't come talking that Derek Chauvin talked to me in my chat room tonight, y'all. That's not what this is about, because we're talking about attorney stuff, all right? I would like to know, do any of you think that your path to becoming, it's the question's it's a little crazy and a little shallow at the same time, because I think we kind of know the answer, but you might surprise me. Would your path to being an attorney have been easier if you were white?
I'll take it. Hell, we'll never know. I mean, I have no idea what it feels like to be a white person. And so I couldn't say that in the slightest. All I know is the journey was what it was. And yeah, but I have no idea at all how to answer that one. Let somebody else handle that one.
Well, I think the answer is fair. I think it's a fair answer. How could you make the judgment when you've never been in those shoes? And I guess I'm wondering, have you experienced attorneys in a room and where you're thinking, how in the hell did they get here? And you know
absolutely
exactly how they got there, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, so I think I do have a response to that in terms of our industry. So not just being a lawyer, but for sure, I mean, within the entertainment industry, it's known to be one, particularly that's based on nepotism and who do you know? So even just as simple as getting your first internship or your first entree into some of these rooms, it's about access. And so I 100% believe that up until the last couple of years and really even, you know, after George Floyd, like a lot of these companies just didn't care and they didn't have to, and they were comfortable with not, you know, even thinking twice about looking around the room and it being 98% or 97%, you know, white. And so what I'm seeing in the industry is a huge shift where companies now realize there's a pipeline problem because they didn't care about Latinx people, Black people, Asian, you know, anyone other. And so when it comes to the senior leadership, when there's no people of color or very few, because they were never introduced in the pipeline to begin with, or if they did, they flamed out because they didn't have the mentorships. They didn't think that aspirationally, if no one at the top looks like me, they didn't think that that was an organization for them. So I absolutely think in a lot of cases, it was easier to get certain places and achieve certain things, particularly within entertainment, if you weren't Black.
Yeah,
go ahead, LaRon.
Now, I was gonna say, you know, when you first asked the question, I was looking at it from the point of just getting through law school. But if you extend it out to getting your first clerkship and job, oh yeah, 100% easier, right? And I'll give you an example. When I was at my prior law firm, you know, you would all of a sudden you would see these summer associates just pop up, like, where the hell they come from, right? And they would come from because the managing partner's friend's client's son is in law school, or whatever, something along, somebody in another office's son or kid or some connection is in law school. And you're like, so then we started a diversity network, a diversity pipeline, and we said, look, you got to give a fair shot for some of these kids, right? And so, but it was very interesting. The first summer that we spearheaded that and started that, we had an Asian and a Black associate for the summer, and they absolutely killed it. And then all of a sudden, then the firm didn't accept the mediocrity that, you know, the BS that they were getting before. And I was like, oh, these are smart killer attorneys. And so then they started, you know, to really be the spearhead for the program. And it was quite interesting, you know, but if you don't have that spearhead, then you don't really get to that, you know, that dynamic.
Does that program still exist?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charles?
You know, Tammi, it's interesting because I had a reaction to the question because I know that it would be technically easier for me with my same qualifications I would probably to kill it, right? But I had sorrow in it but then I wouldn't be black, you know? So I couldn't even process the question, but to ask it fairly or to answer it fairly, that's what Diesel is about. It's about creating pipeline. It's about creating our own networks. It's about the fact that in order to even get in some of these rooms, you have to be over prepared anyway, at least twice or 1.5 times as good as other people. So, when you have a network of people who've already sort of surmounted all these things, you have a deeply powerful network.
Yeah, I always find it interesting how people against affirmative action assume that because someone got into some establishment due to affirmative action that they're less than or not qualified, when it's actually the opposite that is true. They are probably more than qualified and only never had the chance. And I wish that people would understand that when it comes to affirmative action. It's not that we want people to hire less qualified people. Black people know we have to be better than everyone else. Even when I think about my own talk show, I think how many white men have had talk shows and how many Black women have had talk shows that have lasted. And I'm talking late night talk shows specifically, the only one that I could think of is comedian Monique. And so, and so it becomes, are all of these white men the best when it comes to talk shows, or have you just not looked anywhere else? Just a question.
It's that relationship thing we talked about,
Yeah, it's the pipeline.
People do business with people they like. And I think you start there, right? And that's just how it always starts. I mean, that's why, like Charles said, when you get in a room full of other people that you like, in terms of the Black Entertainment Sports Lawyers Association, you build that relationship. And then that's when someone will get an opportunity because you've built the relationship. And now it's not just about what are the credentials on the resume, because guess what? Most likely the Black people have better credentials. I mean, we have to have great credentials to get in law school, to get enough money, and in most cases to get a scholarship. I know I needed a scholarship in order to get in law school, so I had to show and prove, or else I just wouldn't have been able to go. And then you have to have top credentials in order to get into a big law firm, to get that credential so that you can go in-house, or you can have that real good opportunity. So yeah, we have to overachieve at every turn.
Yeah, I know I said I didn't want to do Derek Chauvin talk, but now I want to talk George Floyd for real, because Marjorie, you mentioned something. You mentioned in this era. And so is there a difference post George Floyd than there was pre-George Floyd when it comes to attorneys and lawyers? I mean, Benjamin Crump reminds me of, Al Sharpton back in the day, Johnny Cochran back in the day. He's kind of the savior lawyer that comes and the cameras come to him. He brings attention to whoever the subject is at that time and creates this big deal out of it. And so do we respect, or does the law industry respect Black lawyers more now?
I can speak from my experience. What I've personally seen is within my companies, I'll say they're willing to listen more, and they're willing to take criticism better. And they're also willing to recognize that, as Aron pointed out, implicit bias is a thing. I think so many people were just comfortable, not having to care and not having to pay attention. And I think, a lot of, those of us that were in places in positions of power, we had the agency to be like, listen, we don't care about it. Enough is enough, right? Like, unless and until you put your money where your mouth is. So whether it's via some sort of program, donating to different organizations that are, a part of the fight, forcing companies to have internal real honest dialogues, and calling people out from the assistant to the CEO and really from the top to the bottom, because things start at the top. Those are a lot of the things that I saw. And some of that even manifested in promotions in certain cases of, Black people and minorities who had been overlooked within organizations that should have long been in more senior positions, but they just weren't a part of the club. So I certainly have seen that, coupled with a lot more programs for focusing on recruitment at HBCUs and these kind of pipeline executive programs. Amazon Studios has one with Howard University called Howard Entertainment. My former company was very supportive of an organization called HBCU in LA. And I mean, these are just a few of the ones that I can name that, companies are focused on getting, diverse candidates into these organizations. And again, not just at the assistant level, but on the executive track.
LaRon, have you seen a difference post and pre George Floyd?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is just that a number of white, older executives and attorneys have basically, for the first time, have said, you know what, I've kind of known this was going on. I turned up my back to it, turned a blind eye to it, but you know what? It's just gotten too far now. And so, I need to do something. And that was really the first time that I had ever heard that. And so it was refreshing in one regard, but it's still a little bit unproven as to how far they're going to take it, right? We've kind of gotten back into the norm a little bit. Everyone's gotten busy again, and we have to hold people accountable. We have to hold these law firms accountable. We have to hold companies accountable to give equal access. We don't want to hand up. We just want the level playing field. I can kill it if I have an equal playing field, and so can everyone else on this panel.
Yeah, I too am wondering if we're just a trend right now. Charles, what do you say pre and post George Floyd?
I'll say this. I carry two emotions in my head about this. There's like molten lava anger, and then there's a sense of hope and possibility and change. And the reason I say that is because
I think those are my emotions. I think you just summed up my own personal emotions. Yeah.
So here's the thing. We've been complaining about this stuff for hundreds of years. After the Civil War, we complained. We knew we didn't want to be lynched. We fought back against lynching. This was happening. And in the modern era, we complained about it. No one believed us until there was a camera phone. Even Rodney King on camera gave people reasons. But it's the thing that makes me angry is you had to sit on George Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes for it to be too gross. Other than that, people will make excuses. So that's the molten anger part. I'm like, I've been saying this for a minute, and you gaslit me and told me that it wasn't true, it wasn't as bad as you said, and they must have done something. And so now, seeing this shift, but now I feel hopeful in some measure because it's not just Black people having to complain and deal with it. I do see allies rising to try to step into the moment, but it's always important for us to keep an eye on our agenda.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black are Black Hollywood lawyers and sports lawyers and music lawyers, all of that. I like, you kind of have to mix in sports nowadays with entertainment, LaRon.
That's right.
You kind of have
it's all entertainment. It's all entertainment.
Yeah. So please welcome Senior Business Affairs Executive at Amazon Studios, Marjorie Williams is with us. A partner at Fox Rothschild, LaRon E. Rogers is with us. And the head of business and legal affairs at Saban Music Group, Charles Hamilton, is with us as well. Yeah, I mean, things are really different. So how do you handle your clients, LaRon? How do you, because now no one's doing one thing. I mean, no one, and by one, no one's doing one thing. I was looking at Jada Pinkett the other day. Not only does she have 2 Facebook shows, but she also has a facial line now, some kind of, skincare line out now. And then you look at Steve Harvey, he's got bacon. And J. Anthony Brown has peanuts. And I mean, everyone is doing something else. How do you handle clients in this day and age where people have several sources of revenue? Do you handle everything or just one thing?
No, we handle everything. And I think at least we do, our firm does, and I do. And that's really a special skill set, right? Because many entertainment attorneys get into the business, and if they're a music attorney, they only know how to negotiate music deals. And if we're talking about a private equity deal, brand ambassador deals, or any other types of restaurant businesses or skincare lines, they may have to refer that out to someone else. But we're able to basically take a client and say, you're the brand. We're going to attract eyeballs through creating content. If you're in the music business or if you're an athlete, we're going to build out your brand, and then we're going to monetize that brand however is authentic to you. And so if you're talking about Steve Harvey and the bacon or whatever's authentic to that client, and we put them into situations where they can monetize that and really grow it and have equity in it and own something, so that in 5, 7, 10 years from now, we're talking about something that's worth hopefully tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're not just dependent on one source of cash flow from the entertainment or sports business. It's about growing the pie. And I always have a conversation with my clients about where their passions are. And so we can figure that out and help them really advocate for different revenue streams. Again, coming back to, why you have a Black lawyer. It's just not about the recording deal. It's about creating income streams so I can retire on the yacht with him. We can go play golf. And I talk about dreams and stuff with clients because that's what we do. We create opportunities.
Charles, I mean, you deal with music. Look, Cardi B has Reebok sneakers. Kanye West has sneakers. These artists now are making sneaker deals, which used to be exclusive to athletes. This is something. Travis Scott's shoes cost $2,000.
It's interesting when you talk about the types of brands that can do that. Athletes and musicians are particularly perfect for that. They're known for their own persona rather than the roles they play. And so it makes it easier for them to take their brand authentically to anywhere and lend credibility. So I think, part of what we do at Saban Music Group is we're not just in music. We're creating opportunities at every step for TV things and merch and touring. And it's an interesting process because everyone knows that if you only think in a linear way about the careers of artists, it's a fool's errand.
Yeah, let's go to our soulmates here. Billionaire Barry. Hey, Billionaire Barry, welcome to the show. Says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. All right. Incog says, I like how Amazon is hiring more Black people in key decision-making positions. The current chief marketing officer is a Black woman, Nigerian to be exact, and she's a Northwestern MBA grad. I've got to get Incog on my producing team. That's a lot of information he knows about Amazon there. Is that true, Marjorie?
Oh, it's true. She's amazing. Her name was Okonwo, and she came from Mac. So she was outside of the industry, but alongside her, there are several key hires across what we call the S team, which is our senior leadership team. A Black woman that was from the auto industry, some people over AWS. I mean, literally across the board. Like I said, I haven't been at Amazon that long, but in the short time that I've been there, I've absolutely seen how our leadership has taken it serious in, understanding like, hey, we've got to change the tech industry because there are people out there. So, if we have to look outside of the normal places that we used to, like, that's what we have to do. And they've done that.
It makes me feel good about my subscription.
And justify your purchases, right?
Right, justify my purchase. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to purchase more responsibly these days.
I was going to say, you best believe, like Marjorie said, if someone ascends to a high level at any corporate institution, whether that's a company or a law firm, and they're brown, they're a badass. You just have to tip your hat because it's a lot of other things besides just doing the work that you have to navigate. It's a whole corporate environment that has to get navigated, and that takes a little bit of delicacy. And not, sometimes as a Black man, you have to step back and strategize. You might have to go talk to a mentor and say, okay, I was about to say this, but let me just run this by you real quick. And then, hopefully that mentor can give you a best path forward and how to handle situations. So I think, Marjorie brought up something really good. I wanted to make sure we kind of talk about that is, navigating a corporate environment is a skill set in and of itself, separate and apart from being a good lawyer or being a good professional in a corporate environment. And that is something we really need to focus on, and helping the younger generation understand that so that they can ascend to the top of organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point. our soulmate says they are now opening their eyes to the reality of what has already been going on. I think we're referring to the artists now. You have some that are actually wanting to work with us more because they see that we have been held back for so long. I'm imagining you're talking about the artist and their deals. Charles, I want to talk to you about something that a lot of George Floyd, talking about George Floyd. Okay. I want to talk to you about something musically. And I'm sure we have artists that are listening in tonight that are watching us. So a lot of artists who are independent, they're going independent today because they see no need for record labels. The assumption is that, or maybe even the history is that record labels give you these grandiose advances, and then they, don't pay you what you're worth, and then they keep your masters. And now we have the internet, we have Spotify, we have iTunes, Amazon. We have so many spaces to place our music now that musicians don't really need the middleman anymore. And not only that, because the middleman, the record labels have been losing money, they've been signing artists to these deals called 360 deals. So can you talk a little bit about that for our artists that are viewing tonight?
Okay, I'll take the question and answer it this way. I think first, to be an artist, you have a decision to make. You want someone on the planet to invest anywhere between $500,000 to $1.5 million to help you get famous. Maybe you want less, maybe you want more. When doing that, whether you're pitching it to your parents or your uncle or your rich uncle, you have to have a business plan and an idea. That may not be something that is for you as an artist. Maybe your brain is more about artistry and creativity. I will say this: record labels serve a useful function if you have a good team and good management to hold them accountable. But they're doing a volume business. And so if you fall off the radar, if your record isn't connecting properly, you could get ignored. And if you don't have the right manager and lawyer in place to put in a call to the head of the company, you get lost in the sauce a little bit. I'll say this other thing: independent artists, they do a real journey. I have a client on the management side who is a gospel artist, independent. He's stayed independent. He's distributed through E1, but what people don't get is the work and money he has to put into his own career. Every dime he makes goes back into his career, but he's committed to it as a business, not just as a performer. So I would say, if you are an artist, if you want to be an artist, you have to read the books about the recorded music business, and then you have to get to know people. Find out, look around, Google, see if you can find some business managers or some attorneys who will sit with you and walk you through it. Any good attorney will at least have an initial meeting with you and point you in the right direction. 360 deals could be good or bad. It's all about the math. I can, no matter what kind of deal we do, I can figure out how many pennies, what percentage of the money I want you to get. So I don't think it's about deal structure. It's about being aware of how the business works.
I'm gonna push back on you just a little bit on that, Charles.
Go for it.
You really have to know the business as a musician today. These artists are just putting it online, and I mean, Soulja Boy is a great example.
You're posting
online, and your career blows up. It takes off. A Lil Nas X, great example.
I will say this: there are 60,000 tracks that go up every day. So that's the conversation. Do you need help in that ecosystem or not? Can you do it yourself? And plenty of people do, but they have to have a different business mentality. Or do you go to a record label and say, I want your expertise, but I need some promises from you, some commitments from you in the contract that LaRon helps you negotiate.
And LaRon, I want to ask you about, you have musicians on your roster as well, right?
Yeah, I represent mostly talent in terms of musicians and independent record labels that sign independent artists and develop them and then either put their music out or distribute them through major labels. Yeah.
So do you represent the artists or do you represent the labels?
I represent both. I mean, I represent and have represented both. So I see it from all the angles. I'm not a big proponent of the 360 deal, but I understand where it started and originated. It originated when Napster came aboard and the record labels were losing money and they weren't making money. But now music consumption is at an all-time high. They're making money. And so independent artists have to understand that they can build leverage up so they can push back on some of that 360 language in these contracts. And that's what you're talking about, is these independent artists who are putting their music out. They're gaining leverage. They're gaining their own fans directly. And so if a record label wants to do business with them, now the economics changes. Now we can talk a little bit differently. Now we can talk about doing a licensing deal where the artist can retain their ownership of their masters or some other things, but you have to have great leverage. In order to have that kind of leverage, you need two things. You need money to be able to market and promote it yourself, and you need a team that have the skill set to do it. And that's where artists who don't have that, they got to look somewhere. And a lot of times that's where the major label comes in. So the major labels aren't bad. And I talked about this on the last show. You're only as good as you can negotiate. So if you don't have the leverage, then you don't have the leverage. It's not the record label's fault that you don't have the leverage, and you have to try and get it somehow.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. So we are talking, the business of being Black tonight is our Black attorneys in Hollywood. And all three of these attorneys are in Hollywood. Charles handles music in Hollywood. LaRon handles pretty much everything from music to, do you have actors on your roster, LaRon?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Film, television, music, athletes. Yeah.
And Marjorie handles it from a corporate perspective. So we know our sister is a bad sister, right? Because she's got to deal from a whole different side when it comes to lawyering. So Charles, we were talking about these record deals and 360 deals and record labels maybe taking advantage of artists and artists taking their career into their own hands today, not needing the record labels. But you say there's some math to this. So let's talk about the math.
Well, let me start by affirming LaRon's point, which is the reason you get better checks is because the record label is also taking less risk if you build your audience before you come to them. On the math, I had a sort of a hypothesis for you, Tammi. Okay. Let's say somebody gave you $900,000 today. And you decided, because you were all about fair agreements for artists, that you were going to start a record label. And because you're Tammi Mac, the next day you have 100 people trying to get your money, and they're all brilliant, they're all talented, right? And they all need $900,000 to record, market, distribute their records, okay? So they come to you for your $900,000. A fair deal, if you don't like deals where you only end up with 20% of the money as an artist, you want to flip it and you want to get 20 or 30%. Let's say you, in fairness, because you're a fair-minded woman, give them 66% of the revenue and you keep 33%, right? You have to make $2.7 million to recover your $900,000 before you even make any money.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't like that deal already anyway. You said they get 66% and I get 33%.
Well, see, now you're starting to think like record labels. so you know, it's
I'm starting to think like Donald Trump.
Because now it's your money. Now it's your money, you know, and record labels can be crazy, lazy, and a lot of things, but at the end of the day, they got to risk that money and you don't have to give it back. So that's the context in which you don't have to sign a bad deal. You just have to know what it takes to not sign a bad deal. You got to be willing to say.
That's good. Oh, that's good. You don't have to sign a bad deal. You just have to know what it takes not to sign a bad deal.
Yeah, but that's all. I'm gonna call a little BS though, because on the economics in the music business historically has been that the record labels recoup all of their investment out of the artist share. Yeah. So it's it's funny math.
I did a different hypothetical.
I know you did a net profit split, which is not the norm for a new artist. You have to have hella leverage in order to get that deal.
I feel like you don't have to have as much leverage as you used to. If you can start a story streaming, you can get a JV everywhere.
Oh,
true, but it's still, you got to have money and skill set in order to get the leverage, right?
But no matter what the joint venture is, you still got to know the math. You're 50-50. You need to know what the distribution fee is and and whether it changes. Like there's a lot of it's not complex math, but it's math. And if you're not into math, get you somebody who knows math.
So that
It's
kind of
definitely
goes
business.
back to what you're saying when you say you have to know the business,
Mhm. Yeah.
the business of it all. You have to know the business. Um, but did Prince do a good job in securing his masters?
He secured them, so yes.
Okay. I was just wondering because Prince was one of those artists that made a really big deal out of it, and a lot of people give credit to Prince. But Ray Charles was another artist who owned his masters, and we sometimes forget about Ray Charles and his masters, owning his own masters as well. Can having the wrong attorney ruin an entertainer's career?
Absolutely. I
Oh,
can tell you from the corporate side, um, it is very clear to me who is on the other side of the phone or who's on the other side of the email. And I say that because if you are someone who either doesn't work in the industry, you don't know how to prioritize your issues and what you're asking for. And so you will drag out closing a deal and making a deal because you don't know what is customary and what isn't. So you're arguing over things that some things, if you work in this business, you know companies are never going to change that. Case in point, if you're going to a company, a large company, you're never going to own your TV show, or you're never going to have those rights. It's just not going to happen. So for me, being on the other side of the table, I absolutely know, if this is someone who does this for a living or who doesn't. And also the other thing that happens is, if you're just a bad attorney in terms of not understanding, like, this is a repeat customer kind of business, right? So how you act on a deal, how you know, engage in are professional or are unprofessional. If I have that sort of interaction with someone, the next time I'm in a deal with them, I'm not giving them anything. They are going to literally have to earn every single deal term from me that they get. So again, some people think, going out and getting a shark or getting someone who has a bad reputation is the best type of attorney. And I don't think that that's the case necessarily in the business side of things. It's very different than if you're hiring someone that's a courtroom lawyer or that's doing criminal law. You want them to fight for every single thing because your life is, on the line. But it's not the same in the business sense.
So let's break something down, Marjorie, here for those viewers who potentially could have TV shows or movies even. That's something that Amazon deals in specifically. So when you say you're never going to own your TV show, do you mean 100%, or do you mean there's some type of wiggle room there where a percentage of it stays yours?
Sure. So I'm saying 100%. What you will get is what we call potentially points on the back end, or, so when in success and there are actually profits. And so there's a similar sort of math, just like how, Charles and LaRon were talking about the record label math. There's also math in the TV and the film industry, where you recoup certain costs, you take distribution fees, and there are other things, marketing expenses, et cetera, that come out of it. And then in success, a show may go into profits. And so that is what, if you have the kind of leverage where you're a creator of a TV show, or, you sell a film project, you will get points on the back end, and you can negotiate those points as if you had a percentage, of the pie, but the company will always, the only exception I can think of is, I can't remember her name, Michaela, her last name is escaping me. But with the HBO show,
Cole.
Yes, exactly. She was able to do it. And I think part of the reason why is because she's British. And in other jurisdictions, they're more favorable towards artists. And so I think that is probably the reason being, but I think that is the only, scenario that I can think of, unless you're, the Kenya Barris or the, Tyler Perry, who now has negotiated these JVs with
Unless
studios.
you have the leverage that LaRon is talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. The leverage, the story, the experience, the background that suggests you have more to come and they
Yeah.
want that more that is to come. I'm interested when you talk about points in the back end, because I understand, and I think most people understand how that works when it comes to the movie theaters, because there are people that you can calculate. But when we're talking about Amazon or Hulu or Netflix, how can there be money on the back end of that when no one's literally paying for one specific piece of work?
So there are different analysis depending on the different streaming entities. So some streaming companies will just pay what we call an advance. So there isn't a back end, but they will come up with a calculation as to what they think this project is going to be worth, based upon a series of metrics. And some of that does include viewers. There are other companies that it's tied to the number of seasons of a show. So the first season, which is what would be equivalent if you were on broadcast network, the first season of a show isn't going to be in profit anyway. So that may be a marker of how many seasons come back of a series. And that determination is made by a lot of different metrics. So whereas now you're getting more of these Nielsen's and ratings companies that are also being able to have some sort of gauge of the performance of a project. The challenge with streamers is we don't necessarily share all the information. We don't share that. So there are internal calculations, and quite frankly, it's not the same as it would have been had it been on TV necessarily, but in some cases, that's why streamers are paying a lot more upfront money.
Right,
So that's
I
the
get
flip
that.
side.
I totally got that. We're going to take a quick break and come right back and wrap up on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Well, it's time to wrap up the show. So let's talk about BSLA real quick.
Yeah, sure. So the Black Entertainment Sports Lawyers Association, been around for 41 years. It was started by a group of attorneys who got together and said, you know what, we need to have some camaraderie, share information so that we can help our clients prosper in this industry. And since then, over the years, BSLA has provided scholarships, networking, and created a pipeline of attorneys and other professionals in the sports, entertainment, technology space that's just provided opportunities in a great pipeline. And all of us have benefited that are on this show here.
And Charles, please tell me how we can get in contact with Saban Music.
You can reach out to me, chamilton@sabanmusic.com. Happy to talk about what we do, and especially if you have some catalogs you want to sell. We ready. Yeah.
They ready. Okay. Thank you so much, Charles, Marjorie, and LaRon, for being on the show again. And please expect my phone call again at some point. That's it for the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Until tomorrow, everybody. It's truly a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.